And he struggled with it at first because he's like, I go to bed at night thinking like, what am I going to do tomorrow? Like, I've got no purpose. I've got nothing going on. And he would try to find like little projects, even if it was an hour to 2 hours. He just felt good about himself completing those little projects, right? Now, since then, he's gotten himself a part-time job, and that keeps him busy for part of the day. And he does a lot more traveling, and but it took him a while to figure that out, right? So it really is the power of purpose.
Wake up, it's time to rise. Talking money with sharp insight. Jim and Ryan here to guide. Mastering the money ride. Saving stacks and planning dreams. Living large by honest means. Tune in now for the schemes. Breaking down financial themes. Money mindset every day.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Money Mindset Mastery podcast. I'm your host, Jim, and joining me as always is my co-host and partner, Ryan Janot. Ryan, how are things today?
I'm doing great. And as we prepared for this podcast, I felt a little bit weird because you were like, oh, we're just going to have a very relaxed feel and not having like, a shirt, tie. Well, I never wear a tie, but a shirt, button-up shirt. But I feel like it's appropriate for this one because today we're talking about like retirement and the feel of just relaxing and enjoying some conversation about retirement. And I guess you will take it away as to what is our topic today, because I think this is a big conversation as even a larger number of people step into retirement, and I have this very often with many clients. So take it away, Jim.
Yeah, well, you know what? We've talked a lot about retirement and different things to do in retirement, how to prepare for retirement. But one of the very important topics that we haven't talked about up until today is the mental health aspect of retirement. So the topic today is finding purpose after retirement, combating isolation and loneliness. And man, like even with wearing the hoodies today, we've been dealing with 3 days of almost unprecedented snowstorms in my region. I think where you live as well. And I was just saying to my wife Carol earlier today, I said the last 3 days has kind of felt like lockdown during COVID, right? Haven't been able to go outside, haven't been able to do anything. And I'm lucky because I still have my wife and 2 kids here at home, as you have your son there, but I still feel isolated. And one of the thoughts that came to my mind was, what's retirement going to be like? If every day is like this. So a lot of people, again, as advisors, and many advisors do a really good job preparing their clients for retirement from a financial point of view, right? They make their projections. We do the same thing. We recommend the investments and portfolios and all those things, right? But one of the aspects that I think we haven't done as good of a job, and it's because we're not mental health experts, is mentally preparing our clients for retirement. Because many people romanticize about retirement, and then when they actually reach that point, it's very different than how they thought it was going to be, right? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think we okay. I know we ask a lot of very important questions, and in comparison to talking with clients who have worked with advisors, we definitely ask a lot of the hard questions that people even haven't thought about for their families, for themselves. And I'm very big into personal growth, and I think when people get into retirement, their mindset is, I'm just going to shut it all off and just cruise. Retirement, I feel like, is not the end of the road for people. It's the beginning to open up for their own growth, for reflection, for personal growth, as I talked about before, and really, obviously, greater freedom because you're not locked into that 9 to 5, because you're set in that. But this conversation is really important to start having. A couple of weeks ago, we had the conversation about things to consider about retirement, and we're really thinking about and I mentioned this on the last podcast too, is people not coming to retirement just being okay, flip a switch and let's go, but really preparing themselves with the dialogue and the conversation, not only with friends and family, but themselves. and what they want to get out of retirement, because it's starting a new chapter in your life, right? And very much I've had this conversation with plenty of clients that never even considered any of the things that we talked about in our last podcast and the one that we're going to talk about today. And I know I've mentioned this many times about the wellness piece, the mental health wellness. And obviously, we're two guys talking about it, and it's probably one of the biggest concerns that I have with people going to retirement is not having a plan, and especially for men, right? For the most part, I will say women are social butterflies in comparison to men, right? And we definitely have, I would say, question is, based on your group of five or six friends that you have in your life, you likely have had those same friends for 20 plus years. I'm relatively speaking, I feel like that's a pretty solid statement for most men going into retirement, right? They haven't made any new friends over the last, right? Because they're not involved in things. And as we dig deeper into this, as you can see, I'm getting excited. But I'm excited to talk about this on a male perspective, and also as a whole for men and women as they go into retirement, is to really think out what retirement is, because that kind of sit it and forget it and just can very quickly become a downward spiral for some, because they haven't found a path that they can kind of get behind, and a passion. I'm sure we'll talk about that too. A passion when it comes to what retirement really feels like, and you are the one that's in control of that. So, yeah.
I like when you said that retirement isn't the end. It reminds me of a conversation I had, I think about 8 years ago, with someone who has been a client of mine for 25 years, a very close friend of mine as well. And we were out golfing. And at the time, he would have been about mid 60s. And I remember asking him how things were going with him preparing for retirement. Like from a financial point of view, we set him up beautifully, no problems there. And he was just slowly starting to wind it down, slow it down. And I was a little taken aback by what he had said to me. He said, and I'm speaking as him, I've reached the age where there's less things to look forward to in life. And I thought, what do you mean by that? I said, well, think about it. And of course, he's explaining this from a man's point of view as well. He said, when you're a young individual, you look forward to becoming a teenager, turning 16 so you can get your license and go get your first car, turning 18, 19 so you can start drinking, your first career, your first job, getting married, buying a home, having a family. There's all these things that you look forward to in life. And then eventually it's like, well, now your kids move out, and then they have kids, and now you have grandkids, and now the grandkids are older and they have their own lives. And he's like, and then after that, there's really not much left to look forward to. And I just found that to be so sad, but true, right? Because if you think about that, like there's all these stages in life, and then once you hit retirement, there isn't really a lot. And I'm saying this, most people, and I think that this can change obviously, but not really a whole lot of things to look forward to. Retirement was the thing that people look forward to, right? Um, and then after that, what is it? Right? It's not a good situation. And I think that gets into a lot of people's heads in retirement. And I'm speaking from someone who's not currently retired. I'm speaking from someone who's helped a lot of people reach that point, right? So this is feedback that I'm receiving, and just from my own observation. And Ryan, you've been around a lot of family members and friends and clients who have retired as well, and you have your observations. But what I always encourage people to do is listen, if you are going to prepare for retirement, you have to find meaning in something. Because I'll even use my father in law, for example. He was a surgeon, he was a doctor for the majority of his life. That was his life. That's what he was known as, Dr. Haskins. Once he retired, he struggled for about 12 months to 2 years because he was no longer a doctor. Like he had been that for 50 years, right? And it did take some time for him to find his new passion, and which was welding. And he's a phenomenal welder. And he finally got into that, and all of a sudden he started doing these little projects for the church, for neighbors, and whatever else. And that gave him meaning every single day, right? So if we look at, for example, understanding the issue right now, we're just going to throw some stats at this point. But according to Statistics Canada, approximately 1.4 million older adults report feeling lonely when they are retired. And that loneliness can actually increase the risk of premature death by 26%, right? That's that's like mind blowing to think that just being lonely, that could lead to a premature death.
Yeah.
Any comments
And
on any thoughts on that?
I just saw this on in an article also on top of the article that you shared, and it was discussed on another podcast that I was listening to. So a quarter of people who retire and feel loneliness have the potential of passing away. And I know that I've heard many stories of clients that have talked about friends or family members that this has happened to. And I know we talk about life insurance and critical illness and things like that, but loneliness is not something we're ready to talk about. And again, this is why we're talking about it now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that fulfillment, that passion, and finding things that we enjoy for, again, personal growth. We always feel like, well, personal growth is for young people and things like that. Personal growth
No.
can happen at any age, right? And that it's a real indication of finding new ways to stay active, to stay engaged, whether it's family members, finding community events, hobbies, pursuing hobbies, just as you said with welding, right? And, and some people go back to part-time work, or they go back to they go to volunteering of something that they enjoy and really find a passion, or potentially something that struck them in their family or friends circles that's helped engage. And that's that is a big conversation that I know I have with a lot of clients that are kind of 5 years out, is what what does retirement look like to you? And that first stage could be, I simply would just want to travel, or I want to spend time with my grandkids. That's a great first wave. Beyond that, you're losing that aspect. Just having a walk a couple days ago and just chatting with a neighbor, and they're saying, you know what, I just want to take the next year to just do nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stress the importance of through that year to really find things that they can really engage in. And especially after we're recording this, I will have to walk by her house and say, hey, I want you to listen to the podcast that we just talked about
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
important it is. So because she already noted she had only been retired 3 weeks, and she already misses the camaraderie of working with her her really friends and coworkers that she works with. So very important for people to find community and things like that to can help that emotional piece, and ensuring that you're not one of these stats that is it becomes loneliness, right? So
Yeah,
um,
it
yeah,
reminds me of a couple clients of mine who, again, I had been working with for about 15 years, helped them get to retirement. And I remember from day one, they always, again, romanticized about retirement and how wonderful it was going to be. They were very busy career individuals. He was a lawyer, she was a law clerk. And we know what that world is like. Very stressful. It can be very stressful. And I remember when they finally decided to retire, and they were excited. I was excited for them. And we hadn't seen each other for about 6 months. So finally, I reached out and said, we should probably do a post retirement review just to see where things are at from a cash flow point of view. And they came down and met me at my office, and they were both dressed up. He was in a suit. She was dressed up beautifully in a very nice female business suit as well. And I remember saying to them, said, oh, you don't have to get all dressed up for this review meeting. And they were both like, no, we're actually both coming from work. Like, what do you mean? Like, you retired 6 months ago. And they both said, we were looking forward. He goes, Jim, we've been looking forward since we first met you to retire. And they're like, the first few months, it was amazing to be able to sleep in and hang around in my pajamas all day long and whatever else. But then it started getting boring. And he's like, I started to miss the commute. The fact that I can go and grab a drink and have breakfast and read my newspaper on the train, and then connecting with coworkers and whatever else. So he ended up going back to work on a part-time basis as a consulting for his other firm. She ended up signing up with a temp agency, and she just basically said, "These are the days that I'm available, and those are the only days, and this is kind of like the geographic location that I'm willing to commute to." So she had control over her time. It kept them busy, but it wasn't them working 5 days a week in the rat race, like 9 to 5 or whatever else. They controlled their overall schedule. And I got to tell you, Ryan, a lot of times, because I play this game with my friends and family, like, when are you going to retire and what are you going to retire? And they always circle back to me because everyone else is like 55 or 60. I'm, going to retire and I can't wait. And then they'll circle back to me and I'm like, I'm hoping to go until I can't any longer, physically and or mentally, right? Because I enjoy what I do, but I also want to be able to stay sharp. I think that's the other thing too, right? A lot of people, they don't really have some form of hobby that they follow. They don't have a community group that they connect with. So their minds kind of start to go a little bit mushy, right? Because they're not. Oh, I forget the word, but they basically need that challenge, right? That intellectual challenge as well. So for me, I'm like, I'm going to keep going till I can't. Now, it doesn't mean that I have to go Monday to Friday, 7 days, or 5 days a week, 9 to 5, or whatever else. I can eventually reach a point where I would be able to say, I'm going to work 2 to 3 days a week and spend the rest of the time doing whatever else. And I've started. I'm going to be 52 this year. I still plan on working until my 70s, but I kind of went back to playing my guitar again. It's something that I had dropped for almost 30 years, right? Just trying to find different things to keep me busy, right? And that's what it is. It's really the power of purpose is what we're talking about. Having a purpose. I know other family members. I know I'm kind of rambling on a little bit here, but things are just coming at me all of a sudden. Where I remember one family member, he was kind of forced to retire early, government job, and he wasn't really excited about the notion of retiring. And he struggled with it at first because he's like, I'd go to bed at night thinking, like, what am I going to do tomorrow? Like, I've got no purpose. I've got nothing going on. And he would try to find like little projects, even if it was an hour to 2 hours. He just felt good about himself completing those little projects, right? Now, since then, he's gotten himself a part-time job, and that keeps him busy for part of the day. And he does a lot more traveling, and so. But it took him a while to figure that out, right? So it really is the power of purpose.
Yeah, and I'm gonna call out for our listeners and the blogs and things that what kind of hobbies, because this is what people struggle with, is what am I gonna do, like, but there's so many opportunities out there. And as I prepared for this, I wanted to make a list of things that I know clients have told me that they discovered or rediscovered, and I wanted to start this dialogue as a resource for people to look to and be like, hey, what's something you talked about welding? Obviously, in hobbies like reading and writing, cooking and baking, crafting, musical instruments, you just mentioned, puzzles, games, gardening. I got into gardening, so I guess I'm semi-retired at that point. Walking and hiking, I guess I do that. So bird watching, I haven't quite got there yet. Fishing, big one.
Mhm.
Golfing, finding some sort of activity that is active. Again, that talks about it. Painting, drawing, photography. That's something I want to get into this year. woodworking, jewelry making. So there's lots of volunteering and traveling and dancing. I know there's lots of couples out there that have always talked about dancing. I know my parents
Mhm.
have done it from time to time, and learning a new language. So here's an example, and we'll include this long list, but I really would love to hear. And I wrote some ones that are especially to your heart, Jim. Tech savvy
Okay.
hobbies,
All
right?
right.
So you know, you know, doing blogging and trading stock. I have a neighbor, John, who did it long before retirement, but has become just an avid trader, and it just keeps him active in his mind and things like that. So, I'm doing this too, is, tracing your family tree, and online courses, things like that. So, and for that matter, anything tech savvy is just learning something different about how your iPad or your technology works around you, and to make your life easier. We were talking about how to shovel driveways without having to use our own energy earlier today. So,
Yeah.
but we'll include this in the blogs as part of it, as other ideas. But I want to throw that out there as to what are other people doing, just to add a resource that people can look to as be like, oh yeah, I used to do this in high school, but I just kind of put it away because I got a good secure job, and the 9 to 5 kind of took over from there. Well, this is your opportunity to kind of rediscovery of those things. So my other
The
neighbor
nine, the
actually
nine
took
to
up
five
rowing
family,
too.
right? Rowing,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
row, row, row your boat.
Yes. Well, like
Okay.
rowing, because I live on probably one of the most famous Canadian rowing courses here in Port Dalhousie. Being able to get out and row and both be physically active and at the same time have a social aspect to it. It's a combination of everything. Lots of ideas. So I wanted to
Well, listen.
share the love.
Yeah, but I'll throw a couple of other ones out there. Like I used to love building model cars. Now finding model cars is getting harder to do because there aren't a lot of hobby shops anymore. But that's one of the things that I thought of myself too, just to keep busy, is to maybe I'm a car guy. I've owned a lot of cars throughout my life, thinking, you know what, I might start with the first car I've ever owned, which was a Chevette, but it was a vet,
Yeah.
and build that, and then go to the next car that I owned, and kind of do that. So that's something that I thought about, that I'd like to do. When Liam, my son, was little, he was into trains. He was a Thomas the engine, and then eventually got into the electric model trains. And we would go to these train shows, and it wasn't full of young men and women that were running these booths. It was generally older men, retired. That was their hobby, right? And I would go in to their homes and see kind of like the big, huge model railroads that they would build in their basements, like just fantastic, like just amazing. But it kept them busy, right? So those are things you can kind of think of doing when you reach retirement. And then if we kind of look at role of organizations, volunteering. That's why you do generally see older people who are the volunteers at the hospitals, for example, or wherever else. There is Meals on Wheels. I knew someone unfortunately passed away a few years ago that he volunteered with Meals on Wheels, and that's what he did. He drove around, delivered food, right, to people who couldn't go out and get their own food. So I think organizations really plays a vital role in helping both society and helping the elderly. Because the other fact too that I haven't shared is studies show that individuals with a strong sense of purpose tend to live longer and healthier lives. So not just longer with a poor quality of life, but they also live healthier lives because they wake up in the morning, they have purpose, they have something to look forward to. Right. I'm guessing for you, you're going to spend a lot of time going to Value Village, doing your Value Village trips.
Potentially. When I worked retail too, there was an important point for me to make sure that I was hiring a certain percentage of people that were in retirement. One, they have so many amazing, fascinating stories to share, and they are able to connect. As people come into any retail shop, you know, people don't always connect with the 16 or 18-year-old that's at the shop, but you make sure that you're hiring people at different age groups, and they bring in different experiences. And I remember this one woman, Gail, who was a, such a beautiful storyteller, and telling her story and telling the stories of how everything connected, and she did it so beautifully. And I was always super fascinated, as a leader within the organization, of just being on the floor and spending time with her to learn from her and her life experiences. And for a lot of young people out there, I think for both old and younger people, is that those generational gaps of being able to learn from each other, both being able to teach younger generations, and for younger generations to learn from people, because I know we all never really listen to our parents. Sorry, mom and dad. But maybe we'll listen to somebody else who really says it the same thing, only in a different way. Who knows? It's just that rebellion, I guess we all do. So, but yeah, the role of the organization is to help us combat that kind of isolation, loneliness that often ends up happening, and the stories that can kind of create and breed success for both sides. And again, there's lots of organizations around here in the Niagara region that help support different areas, as you said, Meals on Wheels, the beautification communities of certain cities. And really, it's you're engaging in social aspects, which is often the number one thing that
Mhm.
leads to that loneliness, creating new groups. And I would challenge men, especially if they're of, as somebody who has moved often, that is often the biggest thing that I've had to overcome and hurdle, which is finding the next kind of group to be involved in, to be active, to be socially active, instead of being a hermit, staying to myself, and that's it. So, yeah,
Yeah. Well, again, going back to the men, like it seems to be a big challenge for them to retire because, again, for the majority of their lives, they were waking up and they were a bus driver, a mechanic, a lawyer, a police officer, a doctor. Like they identified with the role, their working role, right? And then all of a sudden, when that came to an end, it was, well, I'm no longer the police officer that I was for 35 years. What am I now? Like they kind of lose their identity a little bit as well when they retire. Um, I have friends who have retired as police officers, and their retirement is very difficult because it's almost as if the 35 years of all the stuff that they saw and they witnessed, they hadn't really processed it. And now they were at home retired, sitting on a couch, and it's like they replayed everything that they had experienced in their role as a police officer, and it hits them, right? So I think really mental health is a big one. We're not mental health experts or professionals, so obviously we can't help you with that. But it doesn't hurt if you are approaching retirement, to even have a conversation with a mental health professional to help them assist you with the mental health side of retiring. Right? And I wish that I had known someone who specifically helps people with preparing for retirement, because if we come across someone that we feel is worthy and valuable, I would love to introduce that individual to our clients because I think it'd be very helpful, obviously, right?
yeah, yeah. I think something that people don't realize too is they have benefits at work, and as they're preparing for retirement, it could be a great conversation to start, because often the benefits cover some of those things of seeing counselors and things like that that will help create the dialogue to overcome what it is and how to mentally prepare. We're having this conversation, which is part of, like, if you've ever seen the movie Patch Adams, we're all doctors in our own right of being
Hmm.
able to help serve people, right, and help identify when people are feeling down, right. And we have the mental health day. Bell does their Let's Talk day, things like that. There's all things about awareness that we we often forget to reach out for help. And Again, we obviously can only speak on our side of being the male side of knowing that we don't often talk about our feelings or what we're dealing with, but we suppress them, and making sure that we're able to kind of verbalize and communicate to, you know, a friend, a family member, significant other, potentially a counselor, what it is that we're feeling. Because I'm looking at things like demographics. Men often retire in Canada at 64, women 62, so they're retiring younger. And then as far as life expectancy too, men in Canada around 82, women 80 about 84. So there's 10 to
That
12
gap is
years
narrowing,
there.
right? That gap's
It is
narrowing.
narrowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, not only is the gap narrowing, but yeah, we're seeing a lot of things. I think Stats Canada is about to release a lot of their information about the latest of what their findings are. So, but yeah, we've lived longer than we've ever lived before, and we work for 40 years. Our first 20 years are goofing off and being raised. The
Right.
next 40 to 50 years are preparing for this moment, but we don't know what to do with the last 12 to 20 years of our life. And I think there's a lot to be said about people reflecting on their life and the importance of family and friends, and how we worked and the things that we got involved in and how we want to leave our legacy. So there's a lot to be said about that. So
Now there is a different trend too. I was watching recently a feature on the BBC, and they were talking about hybrid work and some of the direct results or impacts of post COVID and the hybrid workforce. And what they're finding right now is there are people that are working longer, so not retiring at your traditional 65. One of the reasons why is because they're able to work from home. So, you eliminate the travel, the commute, and all those things. And they're sitting there. So, from an employee point of view, they're like, you know what? I'm at home. I get to work and continue on earning a living. So, delay my retirement keeps me busy. From an employer point of view, they value having that older person as an employee because of their experience, right? That's the one thing that the older generation is definitely bringing to the table to the employers is the experience, the knowledge. That's one thing that AI can't give you is experience, right? I mean, it is formed based on models and information, but you and I could talk about a situation and we can bring up an experience that we have dealt with or a client has dealt with, just like retirement, right? And share that the impact with individuals, right? So we are seeing that as a trend. Again, if I look at my own personal situation, um, if I can mentally and physically still keep working in my 70s, why not? Like I don't really have a lot of other hobbies, things to do and travel. Yeah, I'm getting tired of the snow. So I think my goal will be to at some point maybe go somewhere warm, for 2 or 3 months in the winter. But I want to be back here in Canada because this is where my family is. This is where my friends are. It's my roots, right? I do find the people that
how else
are,
are you supposed to be? I was going to say, how else are you supposed to be here for the Toronto Maple Leaf parade once they win the Stanley Cup, unless you're
I'll be
here
back.
locally, right?
Yeah, I'll be back for that for sure when it happens. Hopefully, it'll happen before I retire. But it's I lost my train of thought now. But the bottom line is, I'm not rushing to retire. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I find that the people who are looking forward to retirement, they just can't wait, are the people who hate their jobs. They hate what they're doing, right? They're retiring from something where the people who enjoy their jobs, they're not rushing to retire because they love what they do, right? And again, that's the position that I'm in. I love what I do, and I'll keep doing this for as long as I possibly can. I don't feel like I need to shut it down by a certain age and walk away from it. That's not how I feel. But I do know people that do feel that way about their jobs and they can't wait. And some of them, what they'll do is they'll retire at 55 because they can, because they have a pension. But then they'll Some of them will start businesses and they'll be busier in their retirement, right, than during their regular working years, because all of a sudden their businesses take off and does really, really well. Or they just change careers. They do something that they've always wanted to do and weren't able to because they had the responsibilities of, again, feeding a family and paying a mortgage and whatever else. So there's a lot. The bottom line is this, people. What we're trying to say is, if you are preparing for retirement and you are 3 to 5 years from that retirement date, you might want to start thinking about how are you going to spend your days during your retirement years. Because that's the other thing that we all say to people, right? Is when you retire, every day's the weekend, right? Every day's the weekend. And I know I've had family members and friends who were laid off, for example, while they were in their 40s. People who prior to that would say to me, "I can't wait till I retire. I'm looking forward to retirement." And then they weren't working for 6, 8, 10 months, and all of a sudden their mindset shifted, and they're like, "You know what? I'm not looking forward to retirement anymore because I kind of experienced that. It was forced on me for 6 to 10 months, and it wasn't fun." Right? So prepare yourself, not just financially, but mentally. You really have to prepare yourself and make sure that you start to find things that will keep you busy. Don't rely on your kids. Your kids might move away, right? I mean, there's so many things that will change in life. Think of it, do it for yourself. Find something that makes you happy and keeps you busy, gives you purpose, right?
Yeah, when you're working a bad job that you hate, it's like being in a bad relationship. It gives a bad taste in your mouth that you don't want to do it again. And I would challenge people to say, you know, look for something that you've always wanted to do and be able to, again, the two things when it comes to mental wellness. What are the social connections that you're going to make in that new job? Your new best friend could be there and you don't even realize it. And how those engaging, meaningful activities and staying active are really keys to making sure that you maintain your mental health when it comes to retirement piece. So, yeah. And if anything, use your resources. We're a great resource to talk things out with people, and finding key people that are around you that are going to support you through your retirement to make sure that that you're always being checked in on. So
Yeah. What I would also say while we're at it is, if you are a mental health professional that specifically specializes in assisting people transitioning from their working days to retirement days, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, find out how you help clients, and if there's a fit, we would love to refer that individual or individuals to our clients, because I think, again, that is a piece that's really missing in the retirement planning world that we're in, is the mental health side of things once you've reached retirement. So I think we're going to be wrapping things up here. Ryan, any final comments that you'd like to make?
uh, obviously talk to your friends and family that are already retired, and get an idea of what it is that they're experiencing, and how you can continue to support them, and how they can continue to support you when it comes to your retirement. Um, and there's a quote from George Bernard Shaw: "You don't stop laughing when you grow old. You grow old when you stop laughing." And I think that's really
I
important
like
for
that.
people to keep in mind,
Yeah.
because I'm always laughing at
Yeah.
everything and smiling, and want to make sure that I project out positivity and awesomeness to everybody too. So
Oh man, you do that, because every time we talk, I'm grumbling about the snow. You've just got a smile on your face. You're like, right. So it's helpful that you are so positive, and maybe really on deep inside you hate it, but you definitely don't show it. So
I worked on cruise ship. I worked on cruise ships for so long, and that's another thing. Lots of clients talk to me about when it comes to retirement is life on cruise ships and going and traveling the world. But when it came to cruise ships, I was away from snow for so long that I started to actually miss it, and now I'm like making up for it all for all those years of living in sandy locations. So, heartbreak to me. So,
So it's your fault.
yeah,
It's your fault we're getting all
so
the snow. All right. So if
yeah,
anyone has any
so,
issues with all the snow, I will give you Ryan's telephone number. So,
yeah,
well, listen, I think this was, again, a really important topic, Ryan. One that I think really does deserve more conversation. So for anyone that's out there watching, listening, we'd encourage you to like what you've listened to or watched, share it, subscribe. You can find us at tvhfinancial.ca. If you're looking for the bigger group where we offer all of our services, you can find us at tvhgroup.ca. Our telephone number is 647-727-4668. And finally, if you want to email us, financial@tvhgroup.ca. So another one in the books, Ryan. We will have another episode next Monday. But until then, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Why is it me? Why am I that guy? I still buy low, still sell high.